today. So I will speak quickly, but please interrupt me if you have any questions or comments. That's why we're here. And enjoy your lunch.
Thank you so much.
Oh, wow. You're welcome. So my name is Jennifer, and I would like to go through the agenda. Every good meeting needs an agenda. I'm going to tell you a little bit about ourselves, very little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about what a master plan is and why it's relevant here. We'll talk about what we think we already know about this place, about this site, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we need to know. That's where I'm hoping you can jump in. And then at the very end, we'll discuss some of the ideas that we've already started to generate, and hoping that we'll get some feedback from each of you. Jennifer Brook from Lemon Brook. Ida.
Hello.
Ida. I'm a mom. I have 3 kids, a husband. I run an office. One of my kids is significantly disabled. I'm a consultant for the Institute for Human-Centered Design, as well as running our landscape architecture practice. These are all personal and professional characteristics that come together and create a lot of the perspective that I have on the world. My oldest is 13, my youngest is 10. So it was crazy when they were little. Ida?
I'm a designer with Lemon Brook, no kids, but I do enjoy the participatory design process. I'm really excited about what we can do here today.
Good, excellent. So our work locally that you may know, the Discovery Museum's in Acton. I think that's more or less how Jen found us. This is a project that recently wrapped up. We were responsible for turning the parking lot there into an outdoor learning and play and discovery center. If you haven't been, it's a great place for a field trip. It's a great place for a birthday party. It's a great place to explore. Another place nearby, the Ripley Playscape, is a outdoor learning area connected to a preschool. Lots of opportunities for sensory input, lots of opportunities for independently driven play decisions and play activities. What I want to stress to you is we aren't the people that you come to talk to if you want us to open up a catalog and pick some play equipment and figure out how it fits into a box that you've drawn on the ground. That is not where we come from. We're really approaching play as part of child development, whole body child development, intellectually, emotionally, and physically. And so these are just some of the things that are nearby that if you wanted to visit or have questions about our experience with these topics, you can certainly ask more or visit. And lastly, we have another area of expertise. We like to make places that are beautiful, public spaces that are beautiful, but also accessible. Those two things shouldn't necessarily be mutually exclusive. They are one and the same. In fact, the Discovery Museums won an award from the Massachusetts Cultural Council, the Commonwealth Award, for being the most accessible outdoor museum in Massachusetts last year.
Excuse me, sorry.
No, come on in, please come in. So I want to talk a little bit about what is a master plan and why, and what is a master plan here at Blanchard. Master plan generally means different things to different people. When we talk about master plan, we're really talking about ultimately a product. It's usually a document. It's usually something that lives online or lives in the paper form, 8.5 by 11, 11 by 17, something you can flip through. So in a nutshell, ideally what a master plan does is it gives you a roadmap so that when parents, usually parents come to you and say, or a class, and say, I want to give you a gift, we've got $10,000. I want to give you a gift, we have $5,000. You don't end up with a little bit of this, a little bit of that, one of these, one of those, and no plan for how they all connect. That's why, especially in a public school setting, a master plan is a really important thing to have, so that when gifts are given, when energy is spent, that it can all go into a funnel, and that funnel directs that energy, and it directs that money, and it directs those those efforts to make something better into something that makes sense, right? So first and foremost, it's a roadmap or a guide for the future. So it's not intended to be the end all be all, you do it all at once, it's one thing at a time. It helps us understand the contextual relationships that are already existing, so it's a lot of research goes into a master plan, understanding what you have here already, looking at the resources that you have. That includes existing resources like playgrounds, but also like wetlands. Those are resources. How do we make those and capitalize on those useful, make them more useful here in this context? A master plan, ultimately, at the end of the day, is a set of goals. It's a document that has drawings, but it really is a set of goals. Those are long-term goals and short-term goals. Long-term goals are the ones that are more expensive, harder to reach, take more organization, and are really made up of a lot of short-term goals to get to the long-term goals. So having these lists laid out, and of course, if you have those goals and you're really clear, you can understand how much is the cost to get from point A to point B. So it helps you plan fiscally for the ultimate build-out that you are aiming for. This is a drawing right here. It shows you Foxborough Blanchard Memorial School down here in the corner. It's like a little island in the middle of the Hager land, and it does connect to other open spaces. So master planning really starts at this scale. At a smaller scale, we've already started to do some investigation. This is the scale that we would be using to do master planning for this property. For example, one of the things we started to look at, and I think the district facilities people fainted when they saw it, was how to manage parking, right? Parking isn't something that you can just do one of these and one of those. 5 parking spaces isn't gonna solve the problem, for example, here at Blanchard. We need a much bigger sort of overall approach. It would be this scale that we would be looking at. And we've started to do some of those studies. And again, this is a long-term goal. Long-term goal, this is not short-term. How do we get here? If this is what we want, how do we get here? We need to break this up into smaller pieces. But knowing that we want this, making it a goal is really the first step. So that's part of our job as a part of this process, is understanding what those goals are. Existing conditions. So we started to take the drawings that we could find of this property and illustrate them so that we all understand and have updated some of the new conditions, like the parking, for example. We all understand what we're working with. So this is a drawing that starts to get at what we have. What's really nice about this is it lets you see that the property is like a peninsula, right? It really is. It's like completely surrounded by water on 3 sides. You don't always feel that when you're here. First thing we start with is all the great things, all the things that are working that we want to amplify, and we want to make louder on the playing field that we're working on. Your outdoor ed is already pretty amazing, given our experience at other schools. You have a teaching staff here, all of you that you showed up today, really awesome, that is engaged, and you want this, right? It is not always the case. Sometimes the outdoors can be terrifying. What do I do out there? What if a kid gets lost? What if a bee happens to land on one of my kids and sting them? Those things have a tendency to paralyze teaching staff. That is not the case here. The garden, you're starting to adopt spaces and use them for teaching. Not only have you adopted the sort of wilder side of the gardens, but you're also looking already at outdoor assembly spaces that you can use. You have all the pieces. It's dry, you have a place to sit, you have shade if you need it, you have a place to write or make marks on the wall. So as far as understanding what's necessary, you're already there. We don't have to teach you any of that. You're starting to colonize the spaces and the edges that you have. The weaving along the fence at the top of the hill is fantastic. What a great opportunity. Is there an opportunity to do more of that? Would you like more spaces to do something like that? Colonizing the fences, clearly you're using these outdoor spaces. You have tables and chairs, and then there's a great deal of pride and the attitude here about how you use the outside. And I think these 2 pictures, the habitat site, knowing that this is a resource and this is something we want to use is really important, but also just the star, like that takes energy. Someone has to do that. Someone has to adopt that, and someone did. So that is really exciting from a master planning and a design perspective, that you have that kind of energy already here, that's not something that's like, you can't teach that, you can't impart that, you can't design that, and you already have it. So we see that as an enormous asset, an enormous resource. And of course, one of the biggest assets you have is the fact that you have these natural spaces, and the fact that they're wetlands is amazing. So we look at this and we say, well, that's a huge resource. How do we capitalize on that? How do we make that more important? For all the really great things that are happening, I know I don't have to, I'm preaching to the choir, there are some things that aren't working out so well, and this is gonna be more related to facilities. There's like two kind of categories for facilities. One is the maintenance and management at the very, very local level, like gardens and things and playgrounds and things like that. And then there's other things that are more at the district level, which is sort of safety and access. And so I'm gonna put them all into one big category so we can talk about them here, but going forward in terms of goals, I think we need to be clear about where these are stemming from. There's a lot of maintenance stuff going on here that is problematic. There's safety issues, broken benches and things like that, broken fences, fences that aren't actually doing their job as fence holding. I know that these are the things that just make you and they make me crazy. The gift of the planter box that doesn't have a parent anymore. That is so not helpful. I mean, we all know that, right? That is so not helpful. How do we deal with these things? How do we take those things and channel that energy that was put into that and put it somewhere else? Storage, you know, if you have to do, that's not really the way we want to do storage. We want to figure out another way to do storage, make it safer for the kids, more accessible for the kids. This image I'm showing you is descriptive of a couple of different things. For one, this is supposed to be a wheelchair accessible table. This bench has broken on both sides. This is supposed to be the accessible route to the playground, right? So as far as accessibility goes, just close your eyes. There's some really big infrastructural problems here. They are all solvable, and they're all solvable in small parts. Some small solutions can make a big difference for accessibility, but may not make as big a difference in terms of experience. It's probably gonna take another step or two to get both the accessibility and raising the level of the experience up to a higher level. And then of course, we have issues that are, again, these are more infrastructural, where you have drainage problems here. This is the accessible route. This is the only accessible route to the playground. And it's not really accessible right now because of the drainage and the patching that's happened. The puddle, you know, right? We were guessing, were these parent gifts? We were thinking that these were all parent gifts, or class gifts that came and they landed sort of in the middle of nowhere. None of these are accessible. If you had a kid in a wheelchair, you can't use swings. And these are the only swings on your site. So not only can they not use a swing, they can't get there. And it doesn't matter who you are, but you're not gonna play tetherball in a puddle. Again, these are solvable problems. These are really solvable problems. And what happens is, when you do a master plan like this, what's great is that you say, yep, that's a problem, and you write it down, and it goes on a list, so that when the next time someone comes to you and says, you know, what can I do? What can we help you with? We can say, here, number 1 on our list, right here. Number 2 on our list. We have a list of 20 things. Take your pick. Where would you like to start? So these are some of the things I think we wanted to point out. This is something that's actually in progress. Connecting, I know this is not school property, but this is one of those things that is an opportunity to make a lot better, and I think is in progress in terms of being made better. So, again, quickly, what we think we know. So we wanted to go through and talk about the use patterns currently. We know that these are working down here. And if I say anything that doesn't sound right, please speak out. We have the 2 outdoor classroom spaces out here, and that you mostly use this door to get in and out to these 2 classroom spaces. We know that there's a lot of activity back here next to the 5th grade classroom garden and the classroom space. This feels like a less used, but would be a pretty useful connection to make. Of course, we have the gate here that takes you to outside, and then this space back here seems to be sort of the primary active use zone. So we have active uses using these doors to get out, and then of course this spreads out to the features that are out here in the middle of the yard. That's what we know. These are those spaces that we were just talking about that sort of accept the lion's share of the gross motor activity on site. This is outside of the field next door. So one of the things we did was we took the topography, we took the building, and we dropped it in, and we started to make a 3D digital model of this so that when we start looking at this as going forward in terms of proposing anything new, that we're doing it in 3 dimensions and that we can show you when we're done. These are existing conditions. So, I'm racing through this because I know you guys, I know you're looking like, what do we do? Where do we start? So we have existing conditions. We know more or less the general use patterns on the site. Where do we start? So the first thing I think we should do is we should clean out the closet, right? We go across, we do this inventory, we look at everything and we say, you know what needs to go? Is there anything here that just needs to go? It can't be fixed, we don't use it anymore, it's more trouble than it's worth. What are those things? Second thing, what are the things that maybe aren't working so great right now but just need a little love? So we rehabilitate the resources that we already have and make them more workable. Third thing on that list is how can those things improve accessibility? You're not gonna get all the accessibility that you want right away, so you make a list, and you start at the list, and you prioritize that list. You start with number 1 and work your way down as funds become available. And as you put pressure on the district, we will help you with that. Connecting the places, you have these disparate pieces, how do you make connections so that you can get from point A to point B? And then we want to create new opportunities. But you'll notice the new opportunities are at the bottom of this list. You shouldn't be letting someone come in here and tell you, oh yeah, you need a brand new outdoor classroom over here, you need a brand new garden over here. You have a lot of stuff here already that's hard to take care of. Don't add more stuff just because you don't want to clean up the mess. It's much better. It's like put the money into cleaning up the mess and making something you have really useful before you go and add a bunch of new stuff. So this is at the bottom of the list. I'm getting very close to the end. So we started to say, well, what are those future priorities? When we start to go forward, we can say, you know what, these things down here, these spaces down here, they're working really well. I don't think we mess with those too much. I think up here, there's a little bit of structure. And we want to talk about what kind of structure we could add to sort of help make that more manageable. And then back here, there are a couple of different things. There's active zones. You have the playground here, which could be improved and expanded to include the areas on either side. And then you have these more passive zones. These are passive transition zones. When they're really close to the building, they're really more manageable for outdoor education or assembly spaces. The kind of prep that you do before you go out on the trail or before you head out into a more wild, less organized area. And then of course, there's this access from the building out to the water. One of the things we're really missing is having a place where you can be right next to the water. Just be, not have to walk anywhere, but actually go out and sit down and be next to the water. So, we wanted to give you some ideas. These are inspirational ideas for these various places that we just identified. It doesn't have to be a lot of infrastructure to get to some really cool places. Again, independently driven discovery, exploration, and play is really the goal. We get less of that with this, but this is also really useful. So one of the things we like to talk about is a hybrid play space that lets you take both of those things and put them together. If you can get out to the water, can we please just like walk straight out from the building, bless you, and have a place to assemble, a classroom that really capitalizes on the overall location of this building. For that. So Ida and I have talked about it. This is your money shot. This is what makes this school completely different from any other public school probably in this entire region, is that you have this access to this wetland, and if you had a place where you could be out there, it would be amazing. These in-between spaces, the transitional spaces between how do you manage a slope? Do you have to have a classroom, an outdoor classroom space that has a chalkboard? You probably don't. These work for assembly in a very different way than this does, but they're both options. Again, these are meant to be inspirational images for you. And then there is the really like the, I need an outdoor classroom space, I need an assembly space. We particularly like the pumpkin. I'll give 3 out.
The pergola will have grapes on it and turn into a winery.
So, I raced through this today. You're welcome, no worries. The idea here is that we don't have time right now to get all the feedback that we would like from you and that would be helpful to this process. So we have email addresses. I'm Jennifer@lemonbrook.com. Ida is Ida@lemonbrook.com. And for the next couple of weeks, we're gonna start pushing this and refining this and start creating those lists. The list of long-term goals, the list of short-term goals, and the diagram, the future opportunities diagram. We're gonna start fleshing that out, giving it a little bit more character. If you have anything to say, anything, good, bad, indifferent, please feel free to email us with comments or thoughts or suggestions. Even like, I really liked X or I hated Y. From what you saw today, we'll figure that out.
Jennifer, would it be helpful, and because I don't think, another survey